Hello, everyone. This is Marilyn Turkovich, and I'm the Executive Director of the Charter for Compassion. And today we have the launch of our first global read for kids. And you can see there, and adults, because I think that every children's book is really an adult book, and has obviously wonderful messages that sometimes those of us who are a little more seasoned than the young people around us don't pay attention to. But today we have a really great treat, and we're just testing out this global read. How many should we have a year? We're looking forward to hearing from people to let us know. We have an adult global read that happens every month, but in this case, we're starting with this first one because it's leading up to a big launch that's going to happen for the Charter for Compassion. And it's all about compassionate kids, and they're being powered by golden ruleism. And we're excited about that. And we're building a site that we think is going to be interactive, and hopefully will have primarily the voices of very young people, and like children that might be between the ages of 4 and 5, even 6, and then we get into older kids. And we're excited about that because there's so much going on in the world of kids, and they're doing so much. So as we're moving forward to the September launch, our website, when you come to it, will have an opportunity for 2 clicks. One for parents, so that they can have some background information, have an opportunity to talk with other parents, just about, being a parent, being a guardian, being a grandmother or an aunt or uncle, or even a teacher, of course. And then there's an opportunity to just go into the website, which is only for kids. And so we're excited about that opportunity that is lying in front of us, because we all know that making a difference together, and the power of small acts of kindness is really what it's all about. And I think so often kids really help us on that path of moving from, feeling deeply about something to thinking, what can I do about it? And then doing it, which is the act of kindness. And of course, all of that relates to the old golden rule and the brand new golden rule of golden ruleism. And as we develop the website, we'll be talking a lot about that. But our big launch is in September. We don't have the date yet, but we did some talking yesterday, and we're thinking that it just will be a 90-minute launch. And we're looking for kids, kids who play instruments, want to read poetry, want to sing. And we're also inviting some entertainers, artists, musicians, singers who really produce works for kids. So it's going to be a combination of both of those things. And of course, as always, everything that we do will be recorded, put on our website, so you can go back to it over and over again. So we said today's the day for this first kids launch of a global read. And we've invited Orlaith O'Sullivan, who we know really well, because Orla has, almost for the last 9 months or so, been leading the last Saturday of every month a conversation, a circle, and she might even talk about this, something that's called a Sangha, where people come together and they experience together. And so when we found out that not only was Orla becoming more and more our friend, that she also writes, and that she has this wonderful book called We Are All Flowers. I'm going to stop this right now and introduce Shane. And Shane works with us on education, and of course, all of the things that I've just been talking about for our launch, but he does a lot more. And so I've asked Shane if he would be the person who would introduce Orla in a much better way than I have, and also to interact with her about her book. And I'm excited because I want to ask Orla, we're all flowers, but I want to know what kind of flower is she? But I'm going to turn it over to Shane now.
Good evening, my good Marlon. Agus Trinona Maya Carja. So thank you very much, Marlon, and good afternoon if you're in my part of the world or close to my part of the world. It's afternoon here in Madrid. It's afternoon as well for Orlaith in Dublin, and the sun is shining, so it's beautiful here as well. So you're all extremely welcome. So Cade Mila Mila Falcha, 100,000 welcomes to all of you, wherever you're coming from, and whatever age you are, how many breaths you've taken in your life, you're extremely welcome. Whether you're a young person tuning in to this live conversation or you're watching this after as a recording, uncles, aunties, parents, grandparents, educators, and all the titles and hats that we have in between as well. It's great to be launching this first of the young orientated global read, and it's fantastic to have Orla with us as well, who is from, I believe, I'm not going to give a huge big introduction because I know you have so many hats that Marlon alluded to here. And maybe you can describe the hat that fits best today, because when we met originally, I also wasn't aware that Orla was a children's author as well. So many other hats I've been familiar with and received many gifts from Orla already. But Orla is at least based in the same county in Ireland where I grew up, where I was born. And so that warms my heart as well. And we did have that conversation that Marlon was alluding to there. So what flower do you feel connected with this afternoon? And so not just to Orla, I'm really curious to know what flower Orla has, because we don't have the answer to that, but to everybody, wherever you might be coming from in the world, if you could just even think about that and maybe try to put our less of our human-centric head and more of our geocentric head on, just to begin this session with, to feel a little bit more grounded and connected with the environment around us as well, that provides so much beauty in terms of nature. But what is the flower that connects with you today? Bearing in mind, we are all flowers is the title of the book that we're going to be exploring and hopefully hearing some of as well. So what's the flower that connects with you? And maybe where are you? That can lead to, if you want to put this in the chat, to everybody. So if you click on everybody, say what flower connects with you and maybe just introduce where in the world you might be, so we can get a flavor and a scent of the flowers, but also a scent and a flavor of where people are coming from this morning. And then we can jump into a very organic, hopefully, and we can keep on using these terms that connect with flowers, Orla, but an organic conversation. But what I won't do is actually give you the title, because we're introducing you as author and today, but maybe I'll ask you the first question, Orla, and we'll get a chance to see all the flowers coming in. And you might also just explain a little bit about the various hats that you have, if that's okay. But I can see that we have is it a trillium outside of Chicago, Illinois? The foxglove. I know already that we've heard about the skunk plant and the horsetail that have been mentioned in our pre-conversation. And there's a few other plants and flora and fauna that are going to be coming in. So you're extremely welcome, everybody, if you've just joined us. But my first question really, Orla, is what inspires you? Because I get a sense from our interactions that it's a choice. The things that you're doing, whether it's writing books or leading sanghas or promoting educational resources for compassion around the world, it's a choice. Maybe it's an intrinsic motivation. At least you radiate that sense from me. So I'm really curious and selfish as well, because I want to know what that inspiration is, or what inspires you, and maybe you can introduce yourself through that question as well, if that's okay.
Oh, thank you so much, Shane. What a beautiful reflection to start with. And what does inspire me? I mean, what doesn't inspire me? I feel that that we have the capacity to live with more openness and honesty and joy, and that we spend a lot of our lives rushing. There are very strong messages around us, and it's like there being very strong currents that we kind of need to make a deliberate act in order to put ourselves in the direction that we want to be in. And so what inspires me is kind of the fruits of this way of living, that there's less fear and anxiety, there's much more connection and gratitude. There's more hope and wonder. I notice good moments and I can enjoy them. Like I remember years ago standing on the edge of Lake Michigan, like a beautiful evening, the sun going down, and it was like I could feel the sand beneath my feet, and I was on fire with stress. I was so cranky. I was furious at someone at work, and I thought this might actually be the definition of stress, that you are surrounded by good enough conditions and you can't enjoy the conditions. And like, what a shame that is. And that really kind of inspired me in a way. The discomfort of it inspired me to think, well, what can I do about that? So that when there's sand beneath my feet and the sun is warm against my skin, that even if things aren't perfect, I can enjoy the good enoughness of that moment. And so when I practice with children and with families, with teenagers, with grown-ups, with businesses, it really inspires me to see how, like, this isn't rocket science, how straightforward it is for a human heart, for our hearts to be encircled together, and for us to choose to open our hearts with a little bit of bravery and see how we're feeling. And that, like, it takes very little to generate this sense of like tribe and fire together, where we can come together and really know that we're not alone, that we can nourish each other, we can be supported. I often say the most difficult thing is getting into the circle, like, turning on a computer and pressing a Zoom link or going to a room and sitting down. And after that, it should just be like much more easeful. So I'm inspired by a lot of things, and I love poetry. I love my garden. I love nature. I love being beside the sea. I adore my family and friends and laughing together. I love great stories and exploring. So I feel that that if I'm open to it, there's so much, like, I'm being offered a feast in any moment if I can, if I can be there to appreciate it. And I love the question about the flowers as well. When I first heard the question, I thought, oh, a little daisy. Like, I was in a very straightforward, like, little daisy, simple, small, enjoying the sunshine. And but now another flower came to mind since we began, which is one of my favorite flowers in the summertime in the garden is aconite, wolfsbane. And I started growing it during the pandemic, and it's so generous. And it always makes me feel a little, like, it always kind of stops me in my tracks a little bit once it starts to open its purples and kind of lavender blues towards the edges. And it just, bees like snuggle right in up into the flowers for months, like well into late September. It will feed the last of the bees. So aconite is very much, that sense of wonder is in me at the moment that I associate with aconite.
Beautiful. And I can see that people are sharing a little bit about their connection or resonance to other flowers. But even while you're describing that plant that exists around you there in Dublin, I feel, even on my nervous system, I feel the benefits of you describing and what that does to you. And so thank you for sharing that. And for anybody else, if you've just joined us, the first question was, what flower connects with you this morning, this evening, this afternoon, wherever you might be? And what's that flower? Share that, and maybe share where you're coming in from. And so the other question, and maybe it's not a question, but it's just a conversation starter, but Orlaith O'Sullivan or O'Sullivan, depending on where you are in Ireland, and even your first name is spelled sometimes differently depending on where you might be in the world as well for pronunciation. But if I was to describe to my 2-year-old or 5-year-old the author of this book that we hope to have in our hands very soon here in Spain, but who is Orlaith O'Sullivan from Orlaith O'Sullivan? And it might take a lifetime of that answer, but what's your
So it's funny, I run a children's group, and sometimes when they're talking about me, like one of their parents will come in and they said, oh, we didn't, my child didn't realize we were meeting today. And then they understood and they were like, are we going to see the kind lady? So I think children often either they draw me with a big smile, or there's a sense of heart warmth. And for me, I am a human who facilitates a way of living mindfully and happily, particularly with an emphasis on community. So being able to live more fully as a member of a family, to know you belong there, in a classroom, in your workplace, in your physical area of community, in your country, on this planet. So how are the ways that we can connect more deeply and meaningfully together is what I'm fascinated about. Because we know that our trend is that we're feeling a little more alone as the years go by. We know that whatever habits that we have in our modern way of living tend to create more of a sense of isolation. And then our hope can get a little bit malnourished. So it's about, I'm interested in finding ways to nourish ourselves so that we can really thrive for our whole life.
Beautiful. I love that description. I'm going to steal part of that if that's okay, and hopefully I can own some of it as well. But and so you're connected with many different organizations, and you're also connected with Plum Village as well in the Wake Up Schools project or program. We will get into the book, and this is why we're here today, and we'll also hopefully have a chance to hear you reading some of your own book. But you want to talk a little bit about Wake Up Schools, what that is, and I'm sure it all influences your writing as well. But your other hat, maybe, that initially I got connected with and learned from, but maybe just a word or two about Wake Up Schools and Plum Village, if that's okay.
Sure. I'm always so happy to talk about Wake Up Schools and Plum Village. So Plum Village is a mindfulness community that was established by Thich Nhat Hanh, who's a Zen master. And I began training with him maybe 25 years ago. And he's known for being a very practical, very inspiring, straightforward teacher. Martin Luther King Jr. nominated him for the Nobel Peace Prize. So he's a huge activist and a poet and a gardener and a calligrapher, and has left behind a more beautiful world, I think, than he was born into. And so Plum Village is a mindfulness practice community with lots of different centers around the world. And a sangha is a word for a group of friends who choose to practice together. So Plum Village has hundreds and hundreds of sanghas, including loads in Ireland. And then Wake Up Schools is the part of Plum Village that seeks to grow Thich Nhat Hanh's vision of mindfulness in education. And he very much very early on, he really kind of challenged, as education was going further and further into this measure everything, this burden of administration was getting more and more and more. I remember him just dropping this question in, going, what is the point in teaching if you're not a happy teacher? Because he says our greatest teaching is our presence. Our own life has to be our message. So what is the point in any of it if you cannot walk into your classroom as a real human being with an open heart and be able to really listen to the lived experience of these other humans in the classroom? And so with Wake Up Schools, we seek to continue that vision. So we have a book. Do I have it within reach? I do. We have a book, Happy Teachers Change the World. And when we were first working on this, it was called Happy Teachers Will Change the World. And then we were getting submissions from, I don't know, maybe 300 teachers around the world saying, this is what I do to open our hearts, to listen, to share lovingly, to support our planet, to take care of grief, whatever it is that was awakened in the classroom. And then it became very clear that happy teachers were already changing the world. So the working title of the book was adjusted. And so we support first educators, but the idea is to support more mindful ecosystems. So that is the classroom, the whole school system, the leaders, the people who clean the school, the people who drive the school buses, the parents, the extended family, all of the grandparents, so that we can create an ecosystem that has a common language to speak about our hearts, to speak about the quality of our minds and our thinking, to notice kind of our habits of where we get stuck, to deliberately cultivate the garden of our heart in terms of, wanting to have a school that feels like, you know, a happy family, a place that we know where we belong, a place where it's safe to make a mistake, a place where it's, you know, where we can create and we can grow. So often schools literally start growing a garden as one of the practices. Yeah, so it looks very different from school to school. So we do retreats for teachers. We have 2 online sanghas each month for teachers, where teachers from around the world connect. And yeah, we really help teachers to take good care of themselves and to embody their own open-hearted presence. Because if they can do that, then the whole classroom changes anyway. So like one teacher I remember described that often he would come in with the sense of like, I want the classroom to be quiet. I need to assert myself in some way, come in with that kind of like waggle energy. And instead he thought, I will do walking meditation. So from the door to my desk, I'll just know every footstep. I'll really feel my footsteps. And he walked really slowly in, and then he'd pick up the duster, and then he'd start wiping the board. And the kids were fascinated because they were like, what is he, and why is he so peaceful? and it's very contagious, you know, to offer. I noticed it especially in the pandemic, when there were times collectively where there was so much anxiety and fear. I really noticed when I was in the presence of someone who offered non-fear or peace. Like, it was extraordinary to have your heart so agitated, or just to be so hooked, and for someone who's really there and is really grounded and has a sense of kindness. It's just an extraordinary gift.
Wow, beautiful. And Mila, Michael, thank you so much for sharing that. So there's 2 titles of books today. So We Are Flowers. We are all flowers. That all is very important. Or the word change as well. So happy
teachers change the world.
Happy teachers change the world. Happy teachers. Yeah. So it's not in the future. It's happening now. And so if you are, again, a student, a young person, a teacher, a parent, a grandparent, and you want your educators to have a copy of that, I'm sure you can get access to that as well. So I'm going to ask you, if you don't mind, in just a second, to maybe share some of the book, and then we can get into the book itself after we can feel and get that sense of the rhyming and the poetry that is, for me, what I've seen of the book, very vibrant. But just one last question, and it's a bit of an Irish connection here as well. So I don't apologize, because I hope that can come out, but I've just come back from a beautiful grounding experience in the northwest of the island of Ireland, and we were exploring with Indigenous communities from around the world these concepts of fortitude, strength, resilience, grounding that you mentioned here. And in Ireland, in Gaelic and Gaeilge, we call that jangin, and it's in sort of geo terms, in plant form, it's like the holdfast from the seaweed that just anchors itself onto the rocks and becomes a part of the rock and sturdy. And so relating this to you, Orla, you've talked about all the different roles, well, and we know all of these different roles that you have, and I know you've just been on a huge journey as well around the world and back home again to Ireland. You've got so much aspirations and ideas, and that they're coming to fruit because we're seeing them. But the question about jangin, this fortitude, strength, resilience. So when there's nothing left in the tank, when the tank is empty and you're traveling from Vietnam, the United States, and back to Ireland, what fuels you? What's the fuel inside for you to keep going?
That's a beautiful question. As you were describing Jangan, a line of one of my favorite poems came up, and it's a poem called "Always Coming Home," or the initiation song of the Finder's Lodge by Ursula Le Guin, and it's this gift that a tribe, and it's a settled tribe. So they normally don't travel, but sometimes people in the tribe decide that they want to travel, that they want to leave. So it's kind of a little weird that, you know, as a collective, they're very settled. And this poem is the gift that they give as someone's about to leave. And one of the lines is, may your soul be at home where there are no houses. May your soul be at home where there are no houses. And I would say I say that poem to myself at least once a day. And it goes like, walk carefully, well-loved one, walk mindfully, well-loved one, walk fearlessly, well-loved one, return to us, return with us, be always coming home. And so when everything kind of slips away, and I know, and especially with flying, like I have this sense of like gone a little bit too far now. It's going to take a while. I know some people think of it as like your soul catching up to yourself. And there's this in between liminal time where you need to kind of hold firm. And yeah, I often think of that like, may my soul be at home. So my breath is here, my awareness is here, my sense of benevolence towards myself is here. And may this be more than enough. May the goodness of this moment be enough as I slowly gather in my nourishment.
I can get a sense of that nourishment, and I can see even from your expression and the way you're able to pause and take that breath to really explain that. And I'm sure home, wherever that might be for anybody listening in, and that connection, that groundedness can be the fuel. And we have an expression in Irish as well, which is toge gaboge. It's one of my favorite expressions right now, toge gaboge. There's a rhythm to it as well. It took me to travel to East Africa, to South Asia and other parts of the world to hear other people using this expression. Pole pole, they say in East Africa. In Swahili is slow down, or shway shway in the Arabic world. It's just to slow down, take the breath, take the pause. Here in Spain, they say paso a paso, like step by step. And in Ireland, where I'm reconnecting this, it's toge gaboge, slow down to just be. And it's something beautiful. And I get that sense from you as well. So maybe if we could all just take a breath and slow down before Orla is generous enough to share some of her writing with us. And this book has been described in if you're just to Google the book today, you'll be described in very rhyming terms. So the charming exploration of flower watering, or the art of appreciating others as well, it's been described as. And that's why, although I haven't had it in my hands, I feel like I've got a sense of this book, and I really look forward to sharing the full book with my two children here as well. And then the other quote that stood out for me was that we all need to be seen and genuinely appreciated to be our best selves. And I think people can connect to that. We all need to be seen and genuinely appreciated to be our best selves, just like whether it's the flowers that we've seen, the little daisy, the foxglove, the horsetail, or what's Marlin's flower, the skunk plant. They all need the water the same way to be appreciated, to be seen, and to be their best selves. So that connection to improving our self-worth, our self-esteem, for me is jumping out of the words that I've seen of your book already. So great, good for that. And if you wouldn't mind maybe sharing what you feel comfortable to share of the book this morning for everybody to enjoy.
Oh, sure. I'm so happy to do this. So this is a practice that that I learned from Thich Nhat Hanh, and the premise is that we're all flowers, and that we need to know how to take care of ourselves to keep ourselves fresh. That some days our energy is very bright and fresh, and sometimes we're not so fresh. So how do we take care of ourselves and each other to support each other? So the book goes like this. It's done in a poetic form, and we do a little mindfulness practice as we go. So I'll give ourselves space for our hearts to engage with that too. And it's written as a children's book. There are lovely bright frogs in a happy froggy world. And it goes like this. We are all flowers, each and every one. We're freshened by water. We reach towards the sun. Sometimes we're strong flowers, super confident, like a big dandelion pushing up through cement. And some days we're droopy, a bit tired or unsure, a bit worried or lonely or sad or heartsore. We have droopy times, so it's just great to know how refreshing each other helps flowers to grow. It helps you and your friends and your family and me and your classmates and teammates and community. You can change the whole day if you can water one flower. You can change the whole world with super watering power. So how do we do it? Here's a pathway that's clear. 3 steps to success in your gardening career. 1, start from your heart. It just has to be true. No fake flower watering. It has to be you. 2, find someone you love. So we'll do this together. You might think of someone who's easy peasy to love in this moment. It can be an animal or a human. Is someone who's so easy to love in this moment. So find someone you love, bring them into your heart, draw them in nice and close so they really take part. You might notice their eyes, or their smile, or their voice, or their hands, or their laugh, or their toes. It's your choice. What do you feel with this person so dear? What things do you sense when this person is near? Snuggled or cared for, loved or heart warmed, included or just safe, your worries transformed. 3, now get super specific. What on earth do they do that you're happy they're them and so happy you're you? It can be big or little, something loving or wise or patient or generous or a lovely surprise. It can be them not shouting when you were so cross, or making ice cream with the best chocolate sauce. Maybe holding you close when you were so scared, or listening deeply so you felt really heard. It can be anything, so let your heart explore and find one thing about them that you just adore. Don't pick up a bucket and drench them all quick. A gentle cascade is what will do the trick. With precision and care, you can refresh with ease, and their hearts will blossom with your expertise. When we water flowers, we're presenting a prize, and people can glimpse how things look through our eyes. We all see things differently. Things mean different things. Some of us love seesaws and some of us swings. Some love bedtime songs. They help us rest deep. And some yank up the covers. I'm trying to sleep. Flower watering helps us to be known and seen, so we know how things feel when they mean what they mean. With practice, flower watering is an everyday joy. It's indubitably a great thing to employ. It helps everyone know that they're there, and you know that they're kind, and you know that they care. So go forth, wise gardeners, and re-energize all the beautiful flowers so dear to your eyes, all the ways that they care for you, you recognize. But wait, there's a 4th step that's crucial to know. For sometimes you're droopy, no energy to grow. There are goggles of gloominess we sometimes wear, and we feel a bit rubbish, and it feels hard to care. This is just when we muster our kindness and strength to help us retune to a better wavelength. We remember small things that we did or we said. We took care of our sleepy selves by going to bed. We brushed teeth and we tidied. We offered to share. We snuggled our pets so that they know we care. We rested and played and we learned and explored. We dreamed and we tried to be patient when bored. We gave someone a hug, or our words brought a smile. We took care of our anger, which was so worthwhile, coming back to our body, feeling safe and at home, breathing deep in our belly, at peace in the zone. There were times we helped loads with our kind, open heart. Drop by drop, we remember. And you'll find, once you start, that a giant cascade of heart pouring pours out, and you've more than you need now, without a doubt, filling up watering cans and a wide reservoir, reminding you you're amazing, just as you are. So don't let it whoosh past. Each drop of memory brings super strength, anti-droopy energy. And you'll know you're a wonder remembering all that you do. You'll remember your goodness, and you'll sense this is true. The importantest flower to water is you. The end. It wouldn't
Sorry.
be a meeting unless we got a chance to say
Wow,
that.
wow, wow. And the last line again, I mean, I love, there's so many lines that are jumping out, and feel free, everybody, if you have a chance to listen to this, and hopefully the recording is there and we can listen to this again. I'm not sure if you've already recorded an audio version, but I want to hear that again. My body wants to hear that again. But if there are any lines that jump out to you from that poem that resonate and connect with you in this moment, feel free to put them in the chat as well. I love it. I really love it, and I want it even more now in a paper form in front of me as well. But maybe there is an audio potential to follow from that. And for me, Orla, there were so many beautiful lines. Whether I was 10 years old or 40 years old, or in 40 years time, 80 years old, they all will have different resonance, but powerful one. And you know, the antidote to feeling scared of that, listening so deeply, so you felt heard. I mean, there's something for me that was jumping out. That was and again, breathing deep in our belly so we feel in the zone. So there's almost antidotes to many of the challenges that we face, regardless of the amount of years we've been breathing on this planet. So again, and you bring it to life. It's like that daily poem that you talk about. It's clear that this is part of you. You're walking the talk of this poem, or at least from what I can see, and attempting to do that.
Yeah, it's not like an intellectual exercise at all. Like, it very is. I mean, there's a practice of flower watering that we do as families and as many different groups where we take turns to water flowers. So whoever happens to be in our heart, we go, you know, I'd like to water my mom's flowers, and you know, we share the specific thing that is important in our mind, what we appreciate, and then everyone appreciates our mom for this one thing. And it's extraordinary to see what is important to other people. So I do this a lot with families, and I remember one little boy was like, I want to water my mom's flowers. And he was so excited. And he was like, because we were walking home, and normally we walk home that way. Do you remember, Mom? But then there was a lane. And then I said, should we go down the lane? And then Mom said, yeah, we could go down the lane. And his mom had no memory of this at all. Like, she didn't understand it. And I don't think she really got why it was a big deal, but she understood that it was a big deal for him. And then, like, in that moment, she was like, you know, my son is a little explorer. And to do one thing differently, like to take one new path, just means the world for him, that he's talking about it a month later. And so we really get to understand, what each of us value. So, like, you know, sometimes we might say, like, you might say, oh, you know, I like my friend Fiona because she's nice. But like, what does nice mean? So if you drill down, you might go, well, I think she's nice because she gave me her last chocolate. She gave me her last piece of chocolate. And actually for Fiona, that might mean nothing because she's not a chocolate person. So it means nothing to go, yeah, sure, take it. Whereas if it was popcorn, she might be like, no, it's too hard. It's my popcorn. So when we listen to each other's appreciation, we understand what it means to them and what it means to us. So that, because some things are effortless and some things are a really big deal. It kind of, it makes us much more nuanced to each other, I think.
Well, what it means to the people who are live in this conversation is clearly quite a lot, and there's some lovely affirmations in the chat here as well. But one of the invitations was to the beauty of being able to see an animated version with your voice over it. I can see that coming onto YouTube sometime soon, or maybe another platform. But I think that would be absolutely beautiful. Maybe you could talk, and again, this is a bit of a selfish thing, but I hope it's in some way connecting to other people as well. So for the benefit of others, maybe you could talk through the process. So anybody who's ever had an aspiration, whether you're 6 years old or 10 years old, or, you know, it doesn't matter how many years and breaths you've had, but you've had an aspiration to put something onto paper and write a children's book from a child's perspective, or from another perspective as well. Could you talk us through maybe from aspiration to
Mm.
paper or to having a book, how that process was, and even this step by step. You've obviously got some beautiful illustrators as well with beautiful names, Tika and Tata, and they play a big role. But even going back a step, what's the step by step process? And this may not be your first book, but what from becoming an author, from not being an author, what was that process like?
Mm. So yeah, I have written my whole life, and I work now, like I run a creative writing circle for teen well-being, and that's probably the easiest way to, it's the easiest example for how I approach it. The purpose of that circle is to learn to work with our creative energy so that it's stable and sustainable and gives us joy. So whether someone has chosen to publish you or not is not my business. Like if you write, you're a writer. And it's very simple. And in order to write well, we have to be prepared to write badly. And there is no way I put through. So like if I decided that I wanted to learn the piano, for example, and let's say I didn't think of it in that way, it was like, I want to perform a great concerto. And then I sat at the piano and I was like, it's not a great concerto. I should just give up. There's something about the fact that we're writing in our own language that makes us think that it should be a concerto as soon as we begin to write. So the first, there is a part in our heart that can be opened to appreciate, to be open to inspiration, whatever that may be, visual, aural, dreaming, imagination, one small thing that happen that sparks, letting ourselves daydream. Like we get inspiration in so many different ways, but we need to allow ourselves to be open to it. It's kind of like opening a little chink where then water can pour through more and more strongly. And so in this creative circle, we have a prompt, and we do a little mindfulness practice to settle ourselves. And then we allow ourselves to write. And it's kind of like allowing our hand to write. So we write physically rather than typing, because we know that typing uses just mostly one half of our brain, whereas physically writing uses both parts and our body. So it's a much more embodied experience. And we allow ourselves to write without censorship. So we just try not to stop. Doesn't matter, misspelling, semicolon or a comma, to choose. And we just keep writing. And even if it's really bad, even if we don't know where it's going, our only obligation is to keep writing. And so we have that as phase one. And then we practice editing. And really, with most of us, I think that's where our downfall is, because it really, we get very disheartened when we write something and it's not great. And then we just think, I guess I don't have anything to say. So we do this as a practice where we spend just part of the time writing, and then we spend part of the time going through it. We normally go through it 4 times with one editing prompt in mind, like look at the verbs. Or, is that verb the perfect verb? Or could you get a different word that'll just spice up that sentence for maximum bang for your book? And then what we're doing is we're training ourselves to be a craftsperson, to be in relationship, so that we're not expecting our creativity to come, like it's very unrealistic to imagine it to come fully formed. It's there, and then we need to craft it and work with it. And sometimes, just like dough proving, we need to put it on a windowsill and walk away for a while. Sometimes, like, we reach a stage in our art, whatever it is, where actually we just need to leave it alone, because we need to grow in a different way so that we can come back and see it with fresh perspectives. So in order to write well, we have to be prepared to write badly. And if you write, you are a writer. And I have no interest in whether HarperCollins has signed you or whether you write in your own journal. If you write, you're a writer.
I love that. It's that simplicity as well that we often talk within the golden rulism concept of the elegant simplicity, but that really is. And I remember interviewing a famous Irish writer, maybe people outside this conversation, you probably would have heard of Roddy Doyle. He's a children's author as well as an adult author, but I remember asking him a similar question, and he gave me a similar answer, although the expletives were probably a bit stronger. You need to get all of the so-and-so out of your system to just do it and be prepared to fail. Like,
oh, aconite.
Oh, gorgeous. I'm just being visited by flowers here. I was just going to say, like the great Irish writer Samuel Beckett as well, he talked about, that concept of owning the failure and fail well, fail often, fail again. And
Fail better. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful. Thank you. I presume this is Marlon, but thank you, Marlon, or whoever is
Thanks,
sharing with
Grant.
us these
Yeah.
flowers. And
I
while we're
love
seeing
it.
the flowers coming, this is the foxglove. So whether they're on your doorstep, in your garden, in the forest beside you,
Look at
simple
that.
daisy and the smile that it can bring.
Beautiful.
Michael, whoever was sharing those gifts with us, thank you so much for sharing those gifts. And maybe sticking with the imagery as well. So how do you work with the illustrators, and maybe talk because they're from Georgia, I believe, but a different Georgia.
Yeah, they're
DeKalb.
from the country of Georgia. I used to curate a museum of manuscripts and early printed books, and I remember we had Georgian Bibles, that the Georgian language was written down in order to hold the Bible. That was its first written down phase. So it was such a treat to meet them. And yeah, they're two sisters who work together illustrating, and we had a few meetings where it was really about wanting to get across the concept of flower watering and also of interbeing. You know, we talked a lot about how, you know, if Shane waters my flowers, then Shane's generosity continues in me and it helps my heart to become brighter. And then I am a little bit more able to water someone else's flowers. And the opposite is also true. Like Shane could be really mean to me and like I kick the next person who I meet. So we really like what the pandemic has shown us literally is that your health is my health, your happiness is my happiness. And we have a profound in Ubuntu is often the word on the African continent that we use to describe it. So with the artist, that was our biggest thing, was how will we get across the sense of connection that you know, the sense of flower watering brings us all together. So they chose a beautiful kind of blue ribbon, like a blue sparkly I can find one for you. Kind of quite a pale blue. I don't know if it'll come up on screen. See, they're swishing around. To try and sense, yeah, this power that's being offered in this. And then they were like, we had spent a while to kind of really establish us as a little circle group of Parallax Press, which is the publishing house that Thich Nhat Hanh founded many years ago. And these writers who were I think they were in Venice and Georgia at the time, and then me in Ireland. And, you know, we took a little time to sit together and be together so that we could share from our heart without it being ego based, or like all we wanted was an end product that would help a child's heart to open. So it was really, by then it was not so personal to do with any of us. Like it was to do with the child who would hold the book. And so there were some drawings that we came to that we were like, yeah, it's lovely, except for this and this and this, and this, you know. And then we started like teasing it apart. And sometimes there was a sentence I remember, because in Ireland we very much have a sense of tribe, and it means something specific in Ireland. But for a North American audience, they were like, oh, we don't think you should say tribe. And I was like, part of me was like, it's part of my culture though. I know that you fear it being misunderstood, but I know what it means. And I was like, okay, it's fair. If you wanted to have as few obstacles, unless you're going to footnote it to explain, then it can sound like cultural appropriation. So I think it was a very joyful, open communication. And then once we got the first couple of meetings kind of solid, then it just flowed really easily. Then, and I think that was because we spent time to really have clarity and harmony about what we were trying to do.
Lovely. I'm aware that we've got about 10 minutes left, so if there are questions that are coming from our guests today, from wherever you might be in the world, please feel free to put some questions in, and we'll do our best to try and pass the questions on to Orla and to share the answers in the conversation today. But if I could maybe just ask, maybe it might be a final question if we get some questions in, but the connection between watering the plants, and we talked a little bit about this beforehand in terms of your relationship with water and how you've been zoning in and focusing on water quite a lot, but the relationship between watering plants and mindfulness, because mindfulness is now a word that's out there. Some people interpret it very differently to others, like many different things. But could you talk to us a little bit about that connection that might be made between the watering of the plants, whatever the plants might be and wherever they might be, and the practices, the embodied practices of mindfulness?
Yeah, so this could be a whole other hour. So let me try and find something where I can sense an end to a point. So I think the word mindfulness can be a little misleading, that we think that it's up in our mind, like bodyfulness might represent it better, or even heartfulness. And I think with this practice, it's a way of living. It's not a tool. It's not an add-on. It's simply a way of being in the world. And what we're trying to do is to cultivate our heart's garden. So we know that what we water grows. And sometimes, like I work a lot with kids who maybe have very strong anxiety that has grown to a level where it's now interrupting their ability to take part in life. It's kind of a bit of a sabotage plant. And when we imagine it as a little garden, then one plant has got all that, they're sucking in all the sunshine, and they're drawing up all the water, and they're kind of like taking over, so that it feels like there's nothing else in us except for anxiety, or except for rage, or except for shame. And so our practice is to, one, deliberately nourish other plants that might not have got so much nourishment. So, the research shows us that there are a bunch of embodied states that help us to live happily, like awe, wonder, connection, gratitude, hope, laughter, etc., etc., etc. The good kind of surprise, something new happening, gives us a little bit of dopamine. So we know that we want to water those kind of plants. How do we feel connected, grateful, imagining a vast firmament of stars above us always makes me feel wonder. And that just wakes up really easily. So it's kind of like the seed awakens and then it goes back to sleep again. But when we hold it in mindfulness, it goes back a tiny bit stronger. So that sense of wonder is even easier to wake up the next time. And similarly, when something like anxiety comes up, if we can hold that in our careful attention and think, I'm going to learn how to be a good friend to you, I'm going to learn how to take good care of you, then when it goes down a tiny bit weaker. So it's a tiny bit more difficult to feel that anxious again. So over time, the quality, and Thich Nhat Hanh says the quality of your life depends on the quality of your seeds. So a lot of our practice is about deliberately nourishing the wholesome things that bring us and our loved ones and the planet happiness. And then if we know there's stuff that causes us pain, causes our loved ones pain, causes the planet pain, we start to notice, well, what are its sources of nutrition? Because everything needs nutrition to survive. So depression needs to be fed every day to survive. Fear needs to be fed every day. And so we figure out what's feeding this, and then how can we begin to cut off the sources of nutrition so that it will naturally just grow, because there's nothing wrong with them. Anxiety is here to keep me safe. It's just here because it worries about me all the time, because that's its job. So there's nothing wrong with anxiety. It just needs to be not overgrown. So the sense of water, of what are we choosing to water? And what we water will grow. So sometimes with kids, we plant 2 seeds and we call one like anger, like something that they know they suffer from. And they might call one like kindness or compassion or humor, something that they want to grow. And then they just practice like not watering one of them and see how it grows. And what happens is the humor or the kindness grows quite beautifully, and the other one that hasn't been watered grows a bit demented and eventually dies away. So you can see it in physical form. What are we growing every day? By the radio, by the voices we listen to, by every text that we read. Like, what are we growing every day? Because over time, this becomes a trait in us.
I love the physical connection here as well. I mean, you started out by saying, mindfulness can often and is often misunderstood, but go to the body, go to the heart. And this cultivating our heart's garden, that direct correlation between a flower and ourselves. We need water. We're 80% water ourselves. we need it as much as a flower needs water, but we also need the other things that nature needs as well. And that other quote you gave there, the quality of our life depends on the quality of the seeds, and then looking at that and exploring our mental states or our emotions from the perspective of a seed. I love that horticulture imagery and metaphor there, but it can be very much, it can be.
Because often they feel like they're set in stone, like we feel like we're set in stone. We feel like, well, that's just who I am. Well, I just need things to be my way. I've always been like that. And it feels really fixed. But actually, we're much more organic. These are just habits that we got into. So everything is to play for. With when we just figure out the conditions, so I think of it as like a gentle sunlight of mindfulness, soft rain of compassion, really well nourished soil, and then how things grow, then they'll grow naturally, So I don't need to force myself to be able to feel joy today, but I know that if the conditions are right for that seed of joy, that eventually it will manifest. Like, it's not possible for it not to. It just needs time. It's the final ingredient.
I definitely think we could talk another hour about this alone. I mean, to be seen, to be appreciated, to be tended to, and then to tend to others, and even just go a little bit below the flowers, and you get into a whole other conversation of the interconnectedness and interdependence, and the solidarity and the support under the ground, trees, plants that they all have. If somebody is feeling vulnerable, if a plant or a tree is feeling vulnerable, there's a network there of people that come to support it as well. So it's a whole beautiful world that we can continue exploring. But your book really, there's a lovely connection between our hearts, our heads, our body, and our natural world that we're all part of as well. I can see one question, maybe even two questions that are, it's a possible finishing off. We've got about 3 minutes, if that's okay, or to keep you here. So one is a very practical one about what library did you create the manuscripts?
So it was called the Scriptorium. In Grand Haven, Michigan, and it was a private library of like cuneiform, early printed books, Gutenberg Bible, Hebrew scrolls, fragments of the text from the Judean desert, loads of medieval illuminated manuscripts, and I was very well nourished every day.
There's a question definitely I'd love to put out there as well about how we might be able to get our hands and our ears connected to what you've been sharing today, but where we can get it is maybe a very simple question, simple answer. But there's a question here relating to Thich Nhat Hanh. So how would you explain to kids why Thich Nhat Hanh is one of the understanding people of our century? Possibly a big question to finish on, maybe not.
So he like grew up in a time of 2 wars. He left Vietnam during the American War in Vietnam in order to raise awareness about peace. And because he didn't blame anyone for the war, he simply spoke about the importance of peace. No one really trusted him. So he was one of the people who brought about the Paris Agreement that ended the war in Vietnam. And what it meant was that the new government in Vietnam thought he was probably an American sympathizer, and the CIA thought that he was probably a communist. And in Vietnam, they withdrew his passport, so he wasn't able to go home. And he chose so after a time first as a refugee in France, he suffered a terrible depression. His mother died and he still wasn't able to go home. And he could have chosen many things. Like, I often think I'd have built myself a hut and I'd have just closed the door. I'd have grown a little garden very happily as a solitary person. And he had a heart that was generous enough to teach, to keep teaching. So then he began teaching, and he's literally changed our world. Like, in the early 70s, he brought together, climate scientists from all over the world to bring everyone together to begin to talk about the ecological crisis and what we can do about it. Like, before, it was on many people's radar. And he's been just and he's so practical and so happy. Like, he has the ability to translate highly complex experiences into something that a 5-year-old child, their heart can open, or like an 80-year-old person who's maybe really fixed in their beliefs can think, oh, maybe that might be true too. I might check for what's true for me. So he's an amazing teacher. a really, really gifted teacher and such a kind human being.
I think that's
So
the
I
shortest
think,
way to answer that question, and that could be explained to children, but everybody alike, and on a very personal level, by accident. And I don't believe in accidents, or casualidad as they call it in Spain. I visited a beautiful place in West Cork called Zouchinbera when I was doing a bit of wandering on my own island, and somehow that around that same time, Thich Nhat Hanh had been visiting the center, the Buddhist center set up there, and I got a chance to hear and connect with this incredible individual. And so I really appreciate what you're saying here as well. And little did I know that had a huge effect on me and those around me as well. So Orla, Gorev Mila Maigad, 1,000 thank yous for your time, for your energy, but also this beautiful book and the gift that you've given to us and to anybody who can get your hands on it. Or as I said, there's a demand. I think your voice and the way you're expressing it was so beautiful as well. So I think that could be, if it's not already there, we can get access to that somehow. Lynn, thank you for putting in the chat. There's a link to the publishers or where we can get this. So remember to save your chat and you can get access to the book. And hopefully we can bring it into learning circles and education circles and homes. And we can maybe be reciting some of this book the next time we come into contact with each other. But thank you everybody else who was able on a Saturday morning, evening, afternoon to connect for our first children's or young people's global read. First of many, we really hope. And so thanks also to our sponsor in Golden Rulism, and to Marilyn and Lynn and everybody else who set this up. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed that. So Orla, thanks a million. I hope you have a beautiful sunshine day with all those lovely flowers around you as well.
thank you so much. And I just put in the chat, so there is a recording. There isn't an animated version yet, but I do have a recording of the whole book, and also resource packs and coloring sheets. So there are the artists. The artists have done up some coloring sheets for us, so you can color in your own version of this land the little frogs live in. And there are resources from for young kids up to teens in terms of the power of gratitude and taking care of ourselves.
Thank you so much. And they're for adults, those coloring books, as well as everybody else. So we can really, yeah, absolutely. Have a wonderful weekend ahead, and let's hope we can stay connected and stay inspired. Thanks again.
Thank you so much. Take good care.